Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the NG Podcast. We're talking to the next generation about being the next generation. Glad you're here. Welcome, David, for hopping on and joining us. He missed hair and makeup, so we apologize for his hair. The trailer on the way in, he didn't see it. But Jeremy has a weird work schedule because of spring break and stuff, which matters a lot more when you go to school. But I don't get spring break. Anyway, you didn't like it. I liked school. But we got David with us today. So we actually have David. We have got Manny, but then we also have Bo. I don't know if you can you even see Bo in there? Bo's over there. Yeah, we got Bo. Yeah. What's up? Bo's in the Manny cam. We got a Bo cam. But we're glad we got a whole family in here. We're talking about fast food and fear today. Because, I will say that sometimes fast food can cause fear if you're not close to a bathroom. I will say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for most people, that's why I hear.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Every now and then we go get our chicken quesadilla. You got to get the chicken quesadilla with no sauce. Because if you get sauce, their chicken quesadilla, it doesn't even stay together. It's so wet that like the two tortillas just like slide apart with the cheese. I don't know. It's like some weird garlic. They're not actual Mexican food, man. Okay.
Well, I know.
But we still get them every now and then. And you just got to be close to a bathroom. That's all I'm going to say. Because every time I go to Taco Bell, I get the same thing. Diarrhea. That's what I get every day. I'm just kidding. But we are talking about fast food. McDonald's, which we have a graphic for this, but McDonald's had some technical issues or they were hacked or something like that. Basically, a bunch of McDonald's across the U.S. had to close because some hacker, which I think that says a lot about America, that if you're a talented hacker, what's the one thing you're going to attack? A fast food place, right? That's just... If you're going to attack our infrastructure, go after fast food, I guess. But that leads us to this small talk session. We're going to talk about fast food. And if you are, if you're wanting to, you can comment and let us know what your answers are. But best fries. I love this question. This is actually one of my favorite icebreaker questions because it tells you a lot about a person, if they're like a Christian or not, Yeah. Because if you don't like the right fries, you're gonna be fried one day, I'm just kidding. But who has the best fries? We'll go with you, man.
Oh.
I hope you've had time to pray about it. And I've already told you my non-answer. So
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for you, Chick-fil-A is not my favorite. This sounds crazy. I just had Arby's.
Okay.
And I had their curly fries for the first time. I went with Etsy. And I actually liked it a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think those are the best curly fries I've had.
Okay.
Better than Jack in the Box, because every time I go to Jack in the Box.
Yeah, Arby's. Well, and it holds on to the sauce, curly fries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like Jack in the Box where it gets soggy. It actually has its crunch still, so I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, that could be because they're overcooked. too.
Well.
No. Yeah, I got you. Where are you with Arby's sauce, though?
Arby's sauce?
I don't know what's in
better
it.
sauces.
What's in it?
Oh.
It's good.
Yeah,
It's
that's
good.
what makes me, because I can never figure out, is it a barbecue? It's not a barbecue sauce. It's not a ketchup. There's definitely vinegar in there or something. But
Yeah.
okay, so Arby's curly, that's where you're at.
I'm going to say Arby's
Okay.
curly fries.
All right. Because again, I like Chick-fil-A fries. Don't get me wrong. They're good. But most of the time when I'm eating, well, not most of the time, a lot of times when you're eating fast food, what are you doing? You're driving, right? It's fast. You got to grab it. And I rate fries. You got crispiness, you got flavor, you got saltiness, and then you got the dippability, right? And they're low on the dippability rating because they're all the size of a plate. You got to roll them up, and then again, Caitlin, she has these things in her car. Okay, they squeeze into the air vents, and you can mount your phone on it. So she has 2 of those, but they're made for holding not just sauce. The size is made for Chick-fil-A sauce trays. She has 2. She has one on both sides, and it slides into the air vent, and then you can take the tray out and wash it just in case you like pour the sauce in there. So she has actual trays made for Chick-fil-A sauce while you're driving.
Nice.
That's my wife.
That's
It is.
that's
It is. And, and you just pull them out and you can like throw them in the dishwasher. I'm like, some dude made millions of dollars off of that, which makes me sad that I didn't think of it. Because it's last week we talked about invention, and sometimes the greatest inventions are not like these humongously complex computers. It could be like, I need something where to put my sauce. I know, right in front of me while I'm driving, and she uses them, but I just can't because she scoops. So okay, here's a good question: with your fries, are fries a utensil for sauce, or is the sauce like the adornment on there?
the adornment.
It's
Yeah.
not her. I truly feel like for her, fries are a vessel to get more Polynesian sauce. She scoops it.
Cups and scoops.
She like rolls it up like a burrito, and she scoops it. She'll probably go through like 2 or 3 Polynesian sauce, which Polynesian sauce is good. But I feel like for her, the fries are the means to the end, and the end is Polynesian
Oh, okay.
sauce. You know,
That was the goal.
that's the goal. And for me, we'll get. I guess we'll get to what sauce, what's your go-to for fries. But Bo, what is your? Because Manny had to go to the bathroom, so he'll be back in a little bit. But Bo's man in the mothership. Bo, best fries. Who has them?
I think Wendy's has really stepped up their game.
Their fry game. Wendy's. Okay,
Rarely
wait.
go to Wendy's.
Don't they have more than one kind of fry, or is it still the natural cut?
Just the natural cuts.
Okay.
But they're like crispy natural cuts.
I never think to go to Wendy's. They got their square patties. I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, Wendy's. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Everybody else says McDonald's. Here's my concern with McDonald's. If you leave those fries outside for like
That's
a
true.
year,
Okay.
they don't change.
Never do that.
As an experiment for what happens in your body, they don't change. Like I saw someone, they did an experiment where they like left a burger and fries out for a super long time, but like the fries never changed. They stayed exactly the same the entire
All the
time.
preservatives.
Yeah, I know. For me, gosh, that's tough. Okay, does it have to be fast food? I guess.
You said fast food.
That's true. Darn. Because I had some bomb fries. Red Robin's fries are pretty good, but they're not fast food. Fast food fries. Okay. I'm probably going to... You know what? I'm going to go with the curly fries, too. Arby's curly fries. I will say that, like, I haven't had Arby's in a long time. And a few weeks ago, I went with Pastor Rich, and we got food, and their fries were probably the only thing I liked on my meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everything else was just not that good. I got their like Greek gyro thing, little taco.
Oh, the taco
I
thing.
tend not to stray from the regular roast beef.
Okay, yeah. Don't stray from the path. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, their fries were really good. I don't know what you're talking about with sogginess with Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box curly fries get soggy?
They just don't hold like
They
full
sweat?
and they just like slang down.
Okay,
And they just have no
okay, I
crunch
got
to
you.
'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want no soft fries.
Soft fries,
You
yeah.
gotta have the crispy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, like, it's exciting, you know, when you get those, like, super curled, like, it looks like a perfect spring. You're
Mhm.
like, oh, I gotta save that one for the end, you know.
Final fry.
You can use that as a straw. Dipping sauce.
For the fries.
Yeah, for the fries.
Dang.
I'm a ranch guy.
I think you can.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find myself sometimes liking honey mustard.
Honey mustard? Really?
Yeah.
That's so exotic. You just, like, got super fancy.
Well, I don't think it's fancy. I feel like most fast food places have that.
Okay, all right. That's what a fancy person would say, but okay. Honey mustard. Have you ever tried honey roasted barbecue sauce from Chick-fil-A?
I didn't know they had that.
Exactly. So it's not in a tray. Like, you know, they're like little trays. You got to peel it back. It's not in that. And it's only behind the counter. They come in sauce packets. They're like the long sauce packets. It's called honey roasted barbecue sauce. That's probably my favorite. That and their buffalo sauce are probably my favorite sauces at Chick-fil-A. You have to try it. Just walk in and say, "Can I get 10 packets of honey roasted barbecue?" And then just walk out. Don't order any food. But yeah, their honey roasted barbecue sauce. It's kind of like honey mustard, but better.
Oh,
Got you. Okay, Bo, dips.
Ranch is a classic.
You can't go wrong with ranch, I feel. But that's not true. Farmer Boy's ranch gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know what it is about their ranch, but
But like I think specifically like Popeyes blackened ranch. That was really good.
Popeye. I never think of Popeyes either. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Okay, blackened ranch.
never had that.
They like burn their ranch. Like, what is that?
It's like
Pepper?
pepper. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. So it's like spicy ranch.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that. I'd love that nobody said In-N-Out. I feel like with In-N-Out fries, it is a house divided. Like, you either love them or you... Yeah, see? Told you. You either love them or you hate them with In-N-Out fries. I like In-N-Out fries. I mean, I wouldn't say that they're the best, but like so many people are like, they're all so super small and you can't, whatever.
They're just never cooked right. I can never get a good cooked.
See? He's passionate. I think they use small potatoes, I will say.
Maybe
And
that's what it is.
Yeah, and I got to say that guy, whoever does the fries, man, that's a workout. All day long. You're just like, because they're like that's a hard
Or on
workout.
Fire.
So next to fries, which I feel like if there was a place that handed out fries for free, why isn't that a thing? Like if you can, I feel like it takes more effort to make tortilla chips than it does to make fries. Right?
I'd say it's about the same.
I mean, you have to cut the fry and throw it in fry grease, but like with a tortilla, like you actually,
Yeah, throw it in the fryer.
yeah, but you have to make the tortilla.
You didn't say you were making it.
Well, okay, you do. Like if you're making your, yeah,
Yeah, if you're
like,
making
right?
French, yeah.
I feel like if you're making it from scratch, French fries, you literally chop the potato and throw it in fryer. But then with chips, you gotta like make the tortilla, cut it up, and then fry it, right?
yeah.
But then when you go to restaurants, chips and salsa, and the salsa takes time too. That's free. Where's the place that hands out free French fries? Like you have endless French fries. Where's that? Red Robin. I think they do like bottomless fries. But like, where's the place that like you order your food and instead of bread, there's like, hey, here's a massive bowl of fries. Like I feel like that's a
Massive
cheat code
ranch.
that needs to be unlocked. It's not like there's there's less potatoes in the world than corn. Like where I feel like whatever restaurant does this, man, they're gonna hit a cheat code. They're gonna be like, oh, I have unlocked. It's just like what we were talking about, like cup holders in an airplane. Like how is that not a thing yet?
Well, I feel like anybody does this should be Red Robin because, like, I don't know.
But
What,
you
what
still
are you
have-
gonna lose?
Yeah, but you still have to order it though. That's the thing is like I'm looking for the place that like you walk in and you're like, yeah, I would like such and such, and they're like, all right, here's your fries with our homemade blackened ranch, and you're like, oh, thank you, yes. That's not even that fancy. Like I feel like chips and salsa is fancier because then you got to cook everything. You have to actually make the tortilla, cut it, fry the chips, and then you have to make the salsa. Way more effort than just here's your fries. Yet you always have to order fries. I don't understand. Like I feel like the restaurant that eventually just does free fries as your pre-meal freebie. Am I wrong?
I think fries might be too filling. That's like a starter.
You've never seen me eat chips and salsa, man. Or bread.
Oh, bread, yeah, bread.
bread-
really felt.
Like bread's really, especially.
I can put down bread.
Well, yeah. So okay, Texas Roadhouse. Caitlin loves their rolls and butter, but she'll like barely eat her food because she'll have the rolls and butter before her food comes, and she's like 2 bites in, and she's like, I need a box. I'm like, what? Because she eats like very very little. But that's the next question. Best pre-meal freebie. So this is a place where like you go into the restaurant, they give you such and such for free. What is it? This doesn't have to be fast food. This is we're taking
yeah.
a hard left on the fast food.
I don't have a lot of experiences with free meal freebies. I don't feel like I'll go to many restaurants, but I would probably say Texas Roadhouse and their rolls. Yeah, I think that's when I think of this. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, well, and I don't think it's the rolls. Go with me on this. What
Okay.
is it that people love? It's the
it's
butter. See,
It's the cinnamon butter.
I told you, it's a cinnamon butter. Because in reality, like their rolls aren't that. Yeah,
They're like a sweet little roll. Yeah.
Like
Not too
I have
much to it.
rolls. They're not that special, but you get. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yes. I'm actually hooking up my MIDI pad today. By the way, I've got it all plugged in on my computer, and I'm gonna walk through the whole thing and try and start to use that. I would love like an audience laugh, like ha 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 ha. Just hook that up, but like yeah, but best pre-meal freebie. You're going with Texas
Well,
Roadhouse rolls and butter.
Yeah, rolls and butter.
All right, and you've never been to Chili's. By the way,
Never been in Chili's.
pre-show, we found out that he has never been to Chili's. Bo's been one time. I don't understand how that's possible. Their chips and salsa. Now you have to order theirs, but their chips and salsa, I don't know what it is, man. They're like super thin chips, and when they get stacked and all curled together, it's like this super crunchy. Maybe we should go there for lunch today. I don't know. Staff post-podcast lunch at Chili's. Next week, we're going to go live from Chili's.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Eat some chips and salsa.
Everything I know about Chili's is from that one episode.
Yeah, can you imagine, like, we're eating chips and salsa while we're live and you're just crunching into the microphone? All the Spotify listeners are like, what is happening? Like, oh, you guys had a lot of feedback on your mic. And like, no, that was the chips and salsa. But, okay, so you're, okay. Freebie, it's a toss-up for me between Red Lobster cheesy biscuits. Are those free? Those are free.
Thanks.
I think. Have you never been to? You've never been to Red Lobster either?
I think
Brother.
I think they're free. I remember not
I think
ordering
they
and they
are.
brought them.
Yeah. Well, and you can even make your own, which I've tried, and it doesn't. It's not the same. But because they sell the box of cheesy biscuits at the store.
Oh.
You can't. Yeah, you can do that today. Just like show up to Etsy and be like, "Hey, I have made you some Red Lobster cheese biscuits." But they are really good. But I feel like that might be exciting for me because I'm more so excited about the seafood because I'm a huge seafood lover. Caitlin is not. Kennedy is. Tade, she's indifferent. But I don't really get to eat a lot of seafood. So if we go there, I'm like getting some crab legs, man. So maybe I'm more excited about the crab legs than I am with that. But I'm gonna stick with Buddy V's in Vegas. Their bread, when they bring it out with the oil and vinegar, it's always awesome. If you go, have you guys ever gone to a place where they bring you the bread, but it's just the loaf, and they bring you a knife?
I don't.
You cut your own pieces of bread. You've never been to a place like that? I always get nervous because you're like, you're sharing. Yeah, well, no, and you're sharing how big to cut, right? But then you're sharing the bread. How do you cut it?
Yeah,
You have to hold the bread to.
that's always. I
So
feel
then
like it would
that
be
means that
pretty
like you're
comfortable.
cutting off your slice, and then now you've just put your gross hands all
Full
over
loaf.
everybody's bread. That's what I'm saying. Like I've got to like think about it. Like, okay, I got to protect everybody else's. Like not like my hands have been in bad places, but you know. Anyway, I
Your family, I don't think there's a problem.
Yeah, I was.
well, when you have children in their hands, you're just like, I don't want you touching. I don't want. Same thing. Like the other day, somebody was like, "Oh, you need some water here, Tay," and they handed them my water bottle, which was like almost full, and I was like, "Nope." They're like, "It's fine." I'm like, "No, I'm not drinking any more of that." Like, I have seen the. Anyway, they don't know what backwash is, but that's mine. So I would say Buddy V's because I don't have to cut it, and that oil and vinegar is super good. Where are you at? Pre-meal freebie.
Oh, it's Texas Roadhouse.
You're with them on that? All right, 2-1. You guys win. Yeah, Texas Roadhouse. I guess they're good. Have you ever heard of a place called Lambert? You guys go to Missouri every now and then. There's a place out in Springfield called Lambert's. There's a few locations in the U.S. It's the home of throwed rolls. That's how they, not thrown. It's home of throwed rolls. And in this place, you order your food, and it's loud. It's kind of like Texas Roadhouse. Like so that same vibe. You walk in, you sit down, and what you order when you order, you only order like the main entree. So like, oh, I want the tri-tip, right? No sides. Why? Because everybody's walking around yelling, and there's a dude with a huge pot, and he's like fried okra, and you flag him down, and then he puts the fried okra on your plate, fried potatoes, all this stuff, macaroni and tomatoes, which is a thing out there. So you could literally, it's technically all you can eat because you order your meat, but then you could just keep eating the sides because they keep walking around. One of the things that they do is they walk out of the kitchen, and instead of walking around with the rolls, there's this humongous tray, and these rolls are like that big, and they're super fluffy, like ridiculously good. But they throw them. So if you want a roll, you raise your hand, and they chuck it to you from the and so, like sometimes 30, 40 yards. Yeah, like they. And I
course.
remember like there was one time we were eating there, and I wasn't paying attention. And my dad turns around and he goes like this. He wants to roll. So he's sitting across from me. He's going like this. And I'm just eating my food. And it hits his hand and he misses. And it just nails me in the gut, like in mid bite. And I'm like, oh, I went down. Like I folded, dude. But those rolls. And then they walk around with sorghum molasses, which if you've never had sorghum molasses, think like twice as thick as honey. It is super thick molasses. And they just put that on there. Those rolls with some sorghum molasses. I would be heftier than I am right now if I lived closer to a Lambert's. I'm just gonna put it out there. They're good, man. They're really good. Anyway, we would ask Manny, but he's still not with us. So send some prayers for him because he's still gone. But maybe did he eat Taco Bell this morning?
Oh, no. Taco Bell in the morning? That's not good.
They got breakfast, right? They got breakfast.
No, I'm saying I know they have breakfast.
Yeah, I wouldn't start my day. I wouldn't start my day with Taco Bell breakfast. Yeah, I do love some breakfast tacos though. I will say breakfast tacos and breakfast burritos has to be one of the gifts. Or breakfast pizza. You ever breakfast pizza? It's biscuit dough that they spread out as crust. So they mix all the biscuits together, spread it out as crust. Then you get white country gravy, scrambled eggs, cheese, and then they put like bacon and sausage sprinkled all over there, and you bake it like a pizza with some hot sauce.
Biscuits and gravy.
Bro. Basically, it's like, oh, it's so good. Don't dip it in. Some people dip it in syrup. Yeah, it's gross. If you could only eat at one fast food place for the rest of your life, where would it be? So this whole story with the pour over makes me think like for those die-hard McDonald's lovers, this was tough. Like their McDonald's was gone. Like
was over,
your morning routine. Like, can I get a coffee? Sorry, sir. We broke. Like, we can't. we can't help you. I'm not a McDonald's diehard, but like, let's just assume that like your fast food place of choice closes down forever, or like everything else closes down, and you're hoping that this one didn't. What is it?
I feel like most people would want to do like their favorite food option, but I feel like I don't know. Like I like In-N-Out. I would say that'll probably be one of my favorite fast food, but I don't think I can eat there every day. Like I would get sick of it.
Yeah, well,
Well,
yeah,
not every day, but like
because it's pretty much just that's a tough choice because it is like one thing on the menu.
Yeah.
Like you can't even get
There's no
variety.
diversity to it.
Like, well, there's diversity. Like, can I get 2 patties instead of 1? How about 4? Okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, like that's variety. Can you take my milkshake and pour it on my fries? Which I do believe that fries are a utensil when it comes to ice cream. Like you have a spoon, and then you have a French fry. No? You've never had fries with ice cream?
No.
A Wendy's Frosty? Oh, that's the best! Salty sweet, man.
Never
That was my
tried it.
nickname in high school. Just kidding. So you said In-N-Out. Maybe?
Maybe, but
We could circle back.
okay. Circle back to me.
Honestly, Taco Bell.
Really?
There's enough variety. I don't get sick of burritos.
I don't get sick of burritos. Okay. Taco Bell is one of those, and of course, like it's the last restaurant before I see home. So like I pass it, and there's no more restaurants until I get home, and there's only like 3 minutes. So I think about it pretty often, especially on Wednesdays when we're here until like 9:30 or 10. And I pass that, and I'm hungry.
You know
So I haven't
it's
had
open.
dinner yet. I haven't had dinner yet, and you're like, I could do it.
That's where they get you.
I could
The
do it.
enticing purple.
Yeah, the enticing go. Yeah, I like purple too. Go Frogs. But which they are doing terrible in basketball. By the way, they lost in the first round to Utah State. So, wow, what a season. Anyway, I'm not a basketball fan, so I'm not going to talk like I am. But if you can only eat one fast food place, you're saying Taco Bell. What would? Oh, you got the Baja Blast. I see. I see
Baja
you.
Blast, the beefy 5-layer burrito. They have a grilled cheese burrito now that you can put steak in.
Oh, I've had that before. I had it with the chicken, but it was good.
Grilled cheese burrito. So it's a quesadilla burrito, or do they actually put toast in there?
No. Like they
Okay.
take the burrito, they cover it with cheese,
Then they
and
grill
fry
it.
the cheese
Yeah.
on top of the tortilla.
Oh, okay. So that's like a melita. Okay, I got you. Chicken melitas. Oh, there's this guy down in Rancho. He has a taco truck. It's called Cinco con Todo. The guy is super cool. He calls you chief. But he makes melitas. So he takes the like corn tortilla, cheese, and fries it, and then puts cheese and then another tortilla, and then your taco, like street taco, on top of it. Oh my gosh, man, those things are so good. Okay, all right. So you got some variety. Does Chipotle count as fast food? Oh, okay, I got you. I mean, it is fast, but I got you. It doesn't have a drive-through. I feel like it should. No?
Actually, I think there's one in Apple Valley that has a drive-through.
Really?
Yeah.
Does Panera count as fast bread? Fast bread? Fast
I
food?
think Panera's really fast food. Yeah.
That would be Caitlin's, I think, even though I don't like... All right, we got 3 sandwiches, and we had to take out a small personal loan to pay for it. That place is expensive, man.
So expensive.
Crazy. Like, well, our bread is special.
Like you can have half a sandwich for 20 cents less.
Yeah, what happens to the other half of the sandwich? Like, that's what I'm confused
Just
about.
give it to me.
Like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna order a half sandwich. Well, then we have to eat the other half. Okay. I'm gonna say,
Chipotle has a drive-thru.
really, they have a drive-through. Okay, I'm gonna say the Habit for mine. Does that count? They got some good variety, but they have this ahi tuna sandwich that I get with wheat bread. I think it's pretty good. But then their fried green beans, those are really, really good. I really like those. There's not much that I don't like, but in fact, you know what? I don't think I've ever eaten anything but my ahi. I need to switch it up more. Yeah.
I only
Um,
had the chicken club sandwich.
Okay. I like it though. The Habit, especially for fast food, it's like high class. You know, like you're like, oh, you eat there.
Definitely higher quality. for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. You're like, no, I don't talk to you McDonald's people. I eat at the Habit. You know, it's like I don't talk to you Taco Bell people. I eat at Chipotle. Like, oh wow. Yeah, but and then, like Chipotle is one of the only places you can get queso. We talked about that a few weeks ago,
Good
but
queso.
yeah, the only place you can get queso. He shakes his head. And that's how you know he's from California.
Okay.
Once you get out of California, man, queso is a thing. And the big question is white queso or yellow queso. Like that's the dividing line. Because it's a thing. Mine is queso from Fuzzy's Taco Shop. That's like my favorite place. That's the closest I could get to California Mexican food when I didn't live in California. Was at Fuzzy's. They're really good. They're a chain. But anyway, you get fuzzy dust on your chips. So, any parting remarks for fast food? We're praying for McDonald's. We hope that they've
Terrible
recovered
thing.
from their shutdown.
Yeah.
I think they'll bounce back. You know.
Make enough money too.
I saw this like reel, and it was like a loading bar of like the most successful, wealthiest fast food chains since like the 1960s. And it like, you know, you see different logos pop up and drop off, and like the second that McDonald's hops onto the scene,
Jeez.
they're in the front forever, man. Like they're just going for, you know, that like you can order well, I guess you can do it here now, but you can order McDonald's delivery on bicycle in China. Like a dude, like they have a hot box on a bicycle, and they just like bring you your McDonald's. Which now you can have everything delivered, I guess. Yeah. Whoever, man, the inventors of DoorDash, they are geniuses. Like we don't have delivery. Now you do. Because I'm going to
Do
pick
it
him.
for you.
The only thing I don't like is if you order from far away. Because then your food gets there and it's like sweaty, soggy, and cold. And you have to like reheat it. But
Ice is melted.
that's why you got to invest in an air fryer. Our air fryer is like bigger than my car. The thing is huge. It has like
5
2
gallon air fryer.
baskets. Yeah, it has like 2 baskets in it. Caitlin got it for Christmas. But I will say, if you have to reheat fries, that's the way to go. Yep, and it's fast. Not the microwave. That turns them into like rubber bands, but not too good. So I'm actually getting concerned for Manny. Manny's not back yet, and I'm kind of. I feel like we need to spend some time in prayer for Manny.
Get back. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here for you, Manny, wherever you are. We're lifting you up. Anyway, speaking of fear, fearing for his soul. Um, so we have another graphic from the pour over, and we'll get to your questions here in a second. I've got a lot from Wednesday, but really, really sad news from yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday.
I think I heard.
Was it yesterday? In Moscow, there was a terror attack. The last I saw, the death toll was up to 137 people. Basically, I think it was a concert hall. Some, people started going in and shooting and throwing explosives and all that kind of stuff. Death toll is really high, especially when you consider, think about how many people are here on a given Sunday. That's like half. Like, that's just crazy to think of that much loss of life out there in Moscow. And ever since then, they're calling it a terror attack, which obviously it is. But ISIS was very quick to claim it. They claimed responsibility for the attack on purpose, which we'll get to here in a second. But then when they pulled suspects of who they think might have done the attack, a few of them were Ukrainian. And so a lot of Russians believe that it was a Ukrainian attack, which then led to them launching this massive counterattack, killing multiple Ukrainians and shutting down their infrastructure and power and all this kind of stuff. And just like a lot of, over there in Russia, just a lot of death and just carelessness with life and all of that. It's awful when you see that, because again, like 137 people are just gone. And actually more than that when you consider the counterattack from Russia on people who were innocent. Obviously the ones that were killed by Russia were obviously innocent. They weren't the ones that carried out the attack. That was just a counterattack out of anger, which we've talked about anger. We've talked about all this on this podcast, but what is the point of a terror attack?
To instill fear.
To instill fear, right? That is literally why they are called terrorists. Their whole thing is to instill terror. That's why that ISIS was so quick to claim responsibility for the attack. Because even if, and a lot of times when terror organizations claim responsibility, that doesn't mean they actually did it. But again, the more scary they can come off, the better they're doing their job, right? They're terrorists. They're wanting to instill fear into the hearts of people. They want you. And a guy like I remember back in 2001. I was just talking to a guy. I went to the drag races with Joel, and a bunch of his buddies for work were there. And he was in the Marine Corps. He started in the Marine Corps in 1999. His name's Chris, and by then he was in for 2 years. So he was on active duty when 9/11 happened. I remember I was in boot camp. I don't know if you remember, I think it was Fort Hood, where a soldier basically just grabbed a gun and started shooting up the base. I remember being in for that. And, I remember waking up in 2001. I was in 6th grade. And there's a song by Alan Jackson, which I'm a country music fan. Don't hate me. But there's a song called "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning" on that September day. And I don't think that's one of those things that you'll never forget where you were. There's a lot of those moments. Like if you talk to people that were alive during Pearl Harbor, like they'll be able to tell you where they were when that happened. I remember I woke up, I was getting ready for school, because obviously it happened at 8 something in the morning over there, which for us was like 5 something in the morning. So I remember my dad woke me up for school, and I brought me out to the living room, and I didn't know what these buildings were. I didn't know what the trade centers were. I was in 6th grade, so I didn't know what the trade centers were. In 6th grade, barely into 6th grade, because it was only about a month into the school year. But I just knew that these towers on fire was a bad thing. But we knew nothing about it. And again, like that's the point of a terror attack. And so being in Barstow, you've got Fort Irwin right there. So obviously every commercial airline was grounded, but we still had military planes flying over. And so we didn't know if it was a military plane that was attacking. And so I remember that day just being scared, like in every single class, when you hear a plane flying over, or when you, like, obviously we're in Barstow, there's tons of sonic booms out there. Like everything you heard, I just remember being afraid. And then I remember traveling because every summer my parents, being both teachers in the education system, we would go to a different place, a different state. By the time I had graduated, I'd gone to every state except for Alaska. It was a cool goal that my parents set up. But I distinctly remember that first flight after 9/11, like the summer after 9/11. And I hate this, but unfortunately, every person from the Middle East that I saw, I was afraid of. And I assumed, even though that statistically less than 1% of Islamic people are extremists, less than 1%, I still believe that even to this day, a lot of people, unfortunately, if they see somebody from the Middle East in an airport, they get nervous. Or they might to start to think like, I hope they're not on my flight. And that's awful. It's terrible because some of the nicest people I've ever met are from the Middle East. In fact, there's a guy, the Marina Market, where we go when we don't want to drive all the way to the grocery store out there in Spring Valley Lake. The guy that owns that place, man, I've had great conversations with him when I'm checking out, at 10 o'clock at night when we need milk because we want to have cereal. That's our bad habit, but that's what terrorism does. Terrorism gives you fear. It makes you think that every flight you go on is vulnerable. Every train you go on, every large event. I mean, can you imagine, like, I even if you survived this attack, you're probably never going to a concert again. That's the whole point, is to instill overwhelming fear in people. And for ISIS, like, their whole agenda is they want to attack those that they believe are against Islam, right? Which is pretty much everybody except for Islamic people. So there's different motives, but we live in a world where one of the medals you get when you're in the military is it's called a GWAT. It's a Global War on Terrorism medal. You get it after you've been in the fleet for a while. It's the little blue one with yellow and red lines on it. And if you think about that, like if you think of World War II, you knew who the German enemy was. You knew who the Nazis were because of the uniform that they were wearing. You knew who the Japanese were because of the uniform that they were wearing. Even if you think of the Korean War, you knew by the uniform. Vietnam, they had uniforms on. The hard part about terrorism is you don't know who it is. And when you talk about a global war on terror, that's a war that never ends, because a terrorist could be, just not too long ago, there was a kid, thankfully they caught him, but there was a kid that was walking around school, I just heard about here, one of the local schools, that was walking around talking about how he had his dad's gun. And thankfully, a kid reported it to a teacher, and thankfully the teacher said something about it, and they took care of it. But like, that tells you that one of the reasons why terrorism instills so much fear is because it's faceless. They don't wear a uniform. It could be, why do we have security the way that we do at our church? It could be just a new person walking in to church, and it's so sad. And honestly, it makes me think of the Cold War. Now, from 1950, Manny's back, everybody. He's good. We're happy for him. Everybody give it up for Manny. He made it. Yeah, welcome back. But I watched this show called Mysteries of the Abandoned. It's my old man show, and it's on Discovery. And basically, the whole show is this humongous structure somewhere in the world, and it says, what is it, and why was it abandoned? And then, like, the whole show, you have all these historians talking about it. You know what most of the things that are abandoned are? The billions of dollars that was spent from 1950 to 1990 out of fear. Because of the Cold War. Guess how many nukes were shot off in the Cold War? Like, to attack. None. They tested them. And it was such a flex show, right? I get this question like, are we going to have World War III? if anything, it's going to be another Cold War. It's going to be a ton of flexing, right?
Nothing.
A whole lot of fear, a whole lot of money spent in fear. Like, I'm sorry, but a lot of this upcharge and stuff, it's not just inflation for gasoline. The government spends a ton of money. Like, did you know that there is a tunnel that stretches from LA all the way through the San Bernardino Mountains that was built by prison inmates? It's not a road. Do you know what it's for? If there was going to be a nuclear strike on LA, people would walk through that tunnel to get to safety. Miles and miles of this tunnel system was built. Guess how many times it was used? None. Out of fear. Because of all this flexing and all of this, like, we've got more nukes than you, and are you a Russian spy? And, you know, all of these things. Like, how many people went to prison because they were suspected to be Russian spies, and yet they got released decades later because they're, oh, yeah, our bad. We got that wrong. You know what I mean? Like, that's what fear does. And now it's even worse because now it could literally be the dude you're sitting next to on a train. That's just having a bad day. You know? And that's what fear does. And so when we think about terror attacks, I'm not going to lie. Like, my initial thought, we leave in 11 days for South Africa. And I've already had people on that team bring up what they're afraid of because of things that they've read online. Oh, I've heard that, you know, such and such, as if the city we're going is the entire country, what they heard about in Cape Town. That's like if you were coming to the United States and you heard about something in Chicago, and so you didn't know if you could travel to Barstow. Okay, bad example. You didn't know if you could travel to Big Bear, you know?
Okay.
And, like, I don't want to discount people for being fear. Like, fear is a real thing. You know, it exists. I get that. Danger is a real thing, which we'll read a quote from Jeremy's movie here in a little bit. But fear exists, and it's inevitable. And it is something that people leverage. And they leverage it for personal gain. They leverage it for political gain. That if I can get you scared enough, I can get what I want. And that's happened for, thousands of years. Fear has been used. One of the reasons why public execution existed in Jesus's day and prior to that was why? To say, don't mess with us, or this can happen to you. Otherwise, Jesus's death wouldn't have happened in public. We're getting ready to celebrate Easter. Why was he hung on a cross outside the city? And the crosses, most of the time, were left up for days. It would actually, a lot of times, it would take days for people to die on the cross. And eventually, they would break their legs, so that way they couldn't keep pushing up for air. One of the reasons why Jesus died so fast was because he was beaten beforehand. He basically got 2 death penalties. But why would they do it right outside the city?
So when you're entering it, it shows you what they've done.
When you're walking in, I think like Pirates of the Caribbean. When you're pulling into the port, what's hanging there?
All the
Pirates.
Yeah.
Pirates, ye be warned, right? Again, fear has been used to control people for a long time. And you might wonder, like, well, why does a terrorist want to do that? They just want to scare people. Because if I can scare you, I can control you. That a lot of times, I don't have to kill your entire military. If I get you scared enough, I can still beat you. Because, if you look at David and Goliath, he's one dude. And no one was willing to step up to him except for this little David. Why? Because he didn't let that fear control him. But, they had a whole army of people. And you're like, I'm not touching that. I don't know. But fear, man, like, fear is such a real thing. And I feel like so many things are invented out of fear. Like, every house that we've been touring lately, you open the door and you know what you hear? Beep, beep, beep. Right when you walk in the door. You know what that is? It's a security system that lets you know whenever door and window is open, or the Ring doorknob. Have you ever been at lunch with somebody when their Ring doorknob goes off and they look on their phone and it was just a bunny in their front yard or something like that? Like, we have so many things that exist, and you can call it security, right? It's good. Have security. But why does it exist? We're afraid because we heard, well, my buddy, they went on vacation and their whole house was robbed. And they had it locked and everything. Like, that's probably true, but you know how small those chances are? And I'm personally like, I'd love to have a bunker with a 50 cal. You know, I think it'd be fun. Not out of fear, just to be able to say I have one. But but still, we're talking about fear because, again, like we said, fear is inevitable. It's going to happen. And we got a lot of scared people, especially now. I mean, you think about those families that are afraid. I'm still afraid sometimes to let somebody else drive me around because of an accident that I had back in 2017. You know, it's a real thing. And so what does the Bible say about it? So we've got some scripture that David and I are going to read for you. And we could sit here and say, like, what's the scaredest you ever remember being? But I remember when I was a kid, obviously you're in Barstow, so lots of things flying over. And I remember my brother and sister were waiting to go to school, and they called my dad, and they were in the garage because they heard helicopters flying over, and they heard something hit the window, and then they heard helicopters flying over. And you know where their brain immediately went? Because every movie in the 90s, I don't know why, but every movie in the 90s, if you think of like Home Alone, Three Ninjas, was all about kidnapping. I don't know what happened in the 90s, but like in every movie, the Goonies, late 80s, everybody was getting kidnapped. I don't understand. And so like you hear stuff in the 90s, and so they call my dad like, Dad, someone's in the house. And so my dad comes flying home. Where are they? They're standing in the front yard. Genius. Like, let's just make sure we're out in the open. So, you know, come to find out, a bird had flown into the sliding glass door. And it was probably just a military or traffic helicopter flying over. But in their brains, it was a guy trying to break in to kidnap them. He had escaped from jail, and the helicopter was looking for him. Right? Like, that's what fear does, right? Like, it exists. Love you, Grant and Em. It exists. I was already at school. Otherwise, I probably would have been the most scared out of all of us. But Isaiah 41:10. Let's see what the Bible says about fear. Do not fear. Okay.
That's a good start.
All right. Good start. Let's pray, right? Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Do not fear. Easier said than done. And then it says, don't be anxious. Cool.
Direct.
Go forth and do likewise, right? How do you practically apply that? We'll get to how you practically apply that. Do you have 2 Timothy? I have 2 Timothy. Do I have that one? I think I have that one. Do you have that one?
No, I haven't memorized.
Oh, well, wow, he's got it. Wow. I stink at scripture memory, man. I'm a pastor, and I'm like, did you know the Bible says it says something about this? Like, I know what it says. I just, man, it's ever since I was a kid, even in VBS, where you're like, you can have this massive lollipop if you memorize the verse of the day. Like VBS as a kid, and I'm like, I got this. Practice all night, not for my holiness, but for that sucker. I sit down the next day, and I'm like, do not. I got most of it, you know. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of timidity or fear, but of power and love and discipline. Man, that's a good verse. You have 1 John 4:18? I have that one. Oh my gosh. Will you do something, please? All right. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. And then Psalm 34:4. You got that one?
Yeah.
There it is. He's got that one. Go for it.
I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears.
Okay. So we're already starting to get to the solution here. What do we do with fear? Because here's what I don't want to say. I don't want to say that it's possible to live a life completely void of fear. We're human beings, and we are prone to wander, we're prone to worry, we're prone to be anxious, we're prone to fear. Fear, like we said, is an inevitability, right? But Jeremy was telling us about this movie last week, and it's just so appropriate that this comes up. But he was telling us about this movie called After Earth, and not After Earth, but after work, I watched it. I went home and watched it. Because I invited you guys over, and I had the party hats and everything. Nobody showed up, so I watched it alone. But I'm just kidding. But I did watch it alone, which is my style. because Caitlin doesn't like movies like that. Great movie. Well, the first 10 minutes were super cheesy, but then after that, pretty good movie. But he said this, and this is like my favorite quote in the whole movie. It says, fear, he says, he's talking to his son, who's terrified because his son has to set out on his own. He's like 11 years old, and he needs to go and basically get something and bring it back when everything wants to kill him and the air's not breathable, right? And so his dad, who's a general, about to retire, looks at his cadet son and he says, fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may never exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. Now, he's not quoting scripture, and Will Smith is no longer claiming, he doesn't claim to be a Christian. I think he's Scientology or something like that, but something new age. But man, that quote is very much in line with what we're talking about today. And a lot of those verses, that it is a choice. I mean, when it says do not fear, what that's saying is don't choose that path, right? That it's going to rise up, that those opportunities to be afraid or be anxious or be worried, those are going to rise up, but don't, right? Even Jesus says, fear not, for I have overcome the world, right? And which we'll get to more of that in a little bit. But even your last verse, read that last verse from Psalms again. Oh, he had it marked. Look at you.
I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears.
Yeah. When has there been a time that God has delivered you from your fears? You know? Like, that's a question on the spot. You can think about it, but I think I immediately think of Tay. You know, this time 2 years ago, we just celebrated her heart anniversary on March 8th. That was her first surgery where they fixed her heart. And I remember being just completely out of control. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't be in the room. And she was an infant. I couldn't even encourage her. She didn't understand anything. And I just remember when they were wheeling her back, I was supposed to be the strong one for Caitlin, you know, for my family. And I will tell you that, like, man, talk about fear. Like, you are completely out of control. The results are not in your hands at all. And being a guy, that's hard, right? That we're the guy, like, men, that we're the ones that want to be able to fix things, you know. And if we can't, that's really hard for us, right? That's what eggs us on to figure out how to fix it, right? That's us. And I remember just weeks and weeks and weeks after that, just that constant state of fear continuing. But there were so many times through people around us, through the doctors, all of those things, where God used people to remind us that His perfect love, His provision is so much better. That even if something had happened to Tay, and we didn't get to have her anymore, which we do, and she's a wonderful baby girl. She's not a baby anymore. She's a toddler. You would never know. But man, God provided all along the way. He provided people to take care of Kennedy while we were there. He provided amazing doctors at an amazing facility that really cared for us and that wanted to take the time to explain things to us so that we understood what was going on. And God used people throughout that whole situation, some that we knew and had known for a long time. And we lived at my dad's a lot because we would just trade places for like 2 months when we were basically living at Loma Linda. But even people at our church, I remember like coming back into our church, and obviously like we have bills to pay. I had to take a lot of time off work, and there's a basket on my desk because one of the Sunday school classes took a collection for us, so that way we can afford food, because the food in Loma Linda is expensive in their cafeteria. And just all of those things, like, did we have, was there things to be afraid of? 100%. But there were just so many times where we just had this overwhelming peace that we couldn't explain. And man, I really feel like that's like, have you ever gone through anything like that before?
I would say not much of that magnitude, but you know, growing up in a Christian home, it wasn't the most perfect family. When when my mom and dad would have those episodes where they didn't seem like they were going the right way, especially specifically when I was younger. That's all you think of. Are they gonna split, or what's gonna happen here? Luckily, I still had my Emmanuel and my older brothers kind of, I guess, comfort me because they understood the situation a little bit more. We didn't, knowing that unknown, like what's gonna happen, between them two, or just going through that everyday process where it seemed like the distance between like my family got further and further.
Yeah. No, and I mean, even like seasons right now, like I remember talking to your mom just on Sunday, and she was going to be on a 10-hour train ride. Bus ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, bus ride. Gosh. Through the middle of the night, and she's gone for a long time, a really long time. Like, that's hard. To be apart from people, to wonder what they're doing, what they're saying, if they're okay, even that can be really hard, man. But I love that you mentioned Emmanuel, your older brother. I mean, even Coop, I'm sure he was super little. But like, again, you mentioned people, like when you're in those scary situations. Ecclesiastes talks about that. I think it's Ecclesiastes 4, but it talks about two is better than one, right? Because one is easily overcome. I think when you're in those scary situations, the people that are around you, whether it's my situation or yours or Bo, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that where you just had a lot of fear, but a lot of those times it's the people that are around you. That if you are alone, yeah, you can crumble, you can fold like a flan in a cupboard, but it's those people that you have around you that help you push through that fear. And so the Bible, I mean, and again, we could keep going. Like, the Bible has a lot to say about fear, because fear is a natural part of our existence. That there are, I mean, if we had a list, if I gave everybody a piece of paper and I let you list things that you're afraid of, like what's your biggest fear? A lot of times people would list things that, again, like that quote says, have not happened yet, right? Because again, like I remember my dad shared this thing with me. Every fear ultimately ends in a fear of dying. That you're not actually afraid of spiders. What are you afraid of?
Getting bit by a spider and dying.
Getting bit by a spider, right? And dying. You're not afraid of heights. What are you afraid of? Falling, right? Yeah, hitting the ground, right? But like this massive study, I guess, went out, and all fears can be. I mean, you're not afraid of missing your bills. What are you afraid of? Not being able to live, like afford to live, and being out on the streets and dying, like not affording food and starving, like whatever it may be. Like all of your fears are rooted in what? In dying, right? Like that if you follow that train, what if I don't pass this test? Well, if I don't pass this test, then I'm not going to get this job. And if I don't get this job, I'm not going to be able to get a house. And if I don't get a house, I'm going to live on the streets. And if I live on the streets, like, right? And we just follow that train that our brains go to so fast that it's kind of dumbfounding, right? And so fear is a natural part of our existence. It's there. And especially that first church, if you talk about who had reason to fear, first church had a lot of reason to fear. If you talk about the Israelites, they had a lot of reason to fear. They were in captivity in an enemy nation for a lot of the Old Testament, and if not, then they were on a conquest with Joshua in war with other nations. And if not, they were in slavery in Egypt, like whatever. And if not, there's a massive flood that's taking out like it. In every season of life for God's people, there has been plenty of reason to fear, right? I mean, David, yeah, he was a great king, but if you read the book of Psalms, like his fears were constantly that there were enemy nations that were just going to kill him, that these other kings were going to rise up, kill his people, kill him, and fear is so controlling. I remember Kennedy finished her first round of swim lessons in Apple Valley. And I remember, like, on the last day, what do you get to do? Get to ride down the water slide. And I remember Kennedy was really excited. And I think she was really excited because everybody else was really excited, right? Like, oh, she's never done this before. So naturally, like, that's a really exciting thing. And the staircase is maybe 6 feet tall, maybe. Really small, little staircase up to this pretty short slide, right? I think the whole slide is maybe like 7 feet long. And you plunge into the water, and right there at the bottom of the water is one of the swim instructors that's there to catch you, right? Because obviously they're not the best swimmers in the world. So every safety precaution is there, right? And I remember we finally get to the staircase, and Kennedy is looking up at that slide, and at the mouth of the slide, it's spraying a bunch of water because it needs to wet the slide so you can slide down. But as she goes up, she gets more and more terrified. Like, I had to convince her to walk up the staircase with me. And then I walked up there, and I was getting soaking wet in my clothes. To walk up to the top of the staircase, and we actually make it to the top of the staircase. And she can see the instructor. She's like, "Hi, I'm right here. I'm going to catch you." But she still did not go down that slide. And I learned that even when we have other people, even when we have people reassuring us, even when we know that all the safety precautions are there, fear is so powerful that it can even still defeat that. That even on that day for her, she didn't go down that slide. And I still wanted her to know that I was proud of her for trying, right? She made it to the top of the staircase. She was even afraid to do that. That's a big thing to overcome, right? For a little 3 or 4 year old. But fear is so controlling, and that's why Scripture spends so much time talking about it. I mean, from cover to cover, it talks about fear, right? Because again, death is a real thing. On Sunday, we talked about Cain and Abel, right? That death is a real thing. So what do we do with fear? We've got two options here. Did you want to read Joshua 1? We've got two options here. We have two things that exist. Fear is going to exist. It's going to be there, no matter what. But you have two reactions when fear arises. You have courageousness, and you have cowardice, or what I would call fight or flight. Courageousness is being able to act in the face of fear. So, I'm a huge World War II. I'm going back through the Pacific right now. Band of Brothers, like all these World War II movies. I love watching them. And it never fails. Like most of these movies, there's the new guy that wants to ask the super awesome soldier, "Why aren't you afraid?" And there's like a quote in one of them where he says, "We're all scared. Everybody's scared. It's just what you're able to do in the face of being scared. Are you going to let that fear control you and defeat you?" I remember the sticker that I saw. It said, "Fear is putting your faith in Satan," right? Are you going to let that fear control you? Or are you instead going to be courageous and stand up and continue to move in the face of that fear? And Joshua says a lot about this. If you want to read, I guess you could just read Joshua 1, 1 through 9.
After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' aide, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon and the great river of Euphrates, and all the Hittite country, all the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn away from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord of your God will be with you wherever you go."
So we like Joshua 1:9. That makes it on a lot of Hobby Lobby stuff. But that be strong and courageous, if you ask someone where's that in the Bible, they would probably say Joshua 1:9. But you just read that tons of times he says it in there. That constant reminder to be strong and courageous, right? And so when someone says you be courageous, what does that inevitably mean? You have the option to be afraid, right? Like if someone says you're going to need courage, that means that you're going to need the opportunity to show courage, which means this is about to get scary, right? And this is who talking to Joshua?
God talking to
God. God is telling Joshua in the first 10 verses, 9 verses of that book, right? You're going to have to be strong and courageous. In fact, and he even goes and he's like, nope, you're going to have to be strong and very courageous, right? Behold, what? Moses is dead. And, you know, I think about shoes to fill. Like, hey, Joshua, the guy that I talked to on the top of Mount Sinai, the guy that led Israel out of Egypt, that stood up to Pharaoh, even though he had a speech impediment, that was met at the burning bush. Yeah, he's dead. And now you have to take his place. So I feel like it's the same as the conversation between David and Solomon, you know, which we won't read, but talk about, just shoes to fill. Like, I mean, did Joshua have every chance to be afraid that he wouldn't live up to you know, that's like John Adams could never have been a successful president. Why? Nothing against him. He just took over for George Washington, the guy that led America through the American Revolution. Yeah, that guy, who was also physically intimidating. Yeah, you're taking over for him. Like, I feel like he just couldn't win. Like, you just can't win, you know? I'm a sports fan. Like, when the greatest coach of all time steps down, it doesn't matter who you are. You're taking over for a legend, right? Like, that in and of itself is scary. Like, living up to that expectation that everybody has, like, all right, well, what are you going to do? You know, like that in and of itself is scary. But then what is he leading them to do? Like, what are they about to do in the book of Joshua?
Better cross.
To do what?
Take the land.
What a massive military campaign when they're coming out of the desert for 40 years. It's not like they've got this huge standing military with a lot of infrastructure. So he's taking these former slaves that have been wanderers in the desert for 40 years into destroy Jericho, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Amalekites, Ai, all of those places. Like, would you say that he's qualified to be a little scared?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like,
a large task.
Yeah, like if you were like, "Are you scared?" and Josh was like, "Yeah," you probably wouldn't be like, "Why?"
Yeah.
You know, you'd probably be like, "Makes sense." You know, like, makes total sense. I'm with you on that. That's probably going to be scary. But again, like, God didn't tell him, "Hey, if you're afraid, I'm disowning you." God knew that fear was going to be there. And so what did he tell him that he would have to have? He would have to have courage. So, like, if you were going to define courage, like, what is that? What is courage? I mean, when we compare it to cowardice is letting fear control you, right? You're flying, you're letting fear defeat you. But what is, I mean, because like that quote said, I love that. Fear is a choice. Danger is real, but fear is a choice. So what would you say courage is?
I would say courage is to do something knowing the risk. Like, just to be strong to it.
Yeah, knowing the risk. Yeah. You're on the high dive. The risk is you slip and miss the water and break every bone in your body. But instead you jump off the high dive, right? Yeah, I think I like your definition. Doing it anyway, knowing the risk. Like, the risk is there. And I'm sure there were so many things running through Joshua's head, right? Like, what are some possible outcomes that he could be afraid of? Let's just list them. What are some, what do you guys got? Some possible outcomes that Joshua could be facing. Some fears that he has.
Losing the battles.
Losing the battles. Dying, I would say, is one of them.
Yeah.
He could die.
Just not being the overall leader that God's telling him to be.
Okay. So not living up to the expectations. Okay. but
Tortured.
captured and tortured. Yeah. Yeah, this is not in a pretty era. This is back when like they would tie one limb to a different animal and send the animals in different directions and that kind of stuff. Would saw you in half and just crazy stuff. So yeah, I would say that's a fear. Bo, you're Joshua. What are you afraid of right now?
Not being able to command the same respect Moses did.
Yeah, I think that's tough. You know, like I feel like Moses got the respect he got because they saw him glowing. Because he was in the like they had to put a veil over his head because he was in the presence of God. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, living to that expectation. That's got to be hard. Man, if I'm Joshua, I don't know why this keeps coming into my brain, but I feel like even the Jordan is scary. That's a big river. And they don't have like boats or anything like that. It's not like there's a lot of wood at their disposal. So I feel like, hey, you're going to cross over the Joshua. I feel like in my brain, I'm like, I got you. I have thousands of people. Like, how are we doing that? You know, like, I feel like that's an immediate fear.
I mean, they know how Moses did it. So, like,
Yeah, like he does. He was there, right? He was there at the parting of that, but again, like that's not like God didn't tell him that this was going to happen, you know, which eventually that is what happens. God stops the water in the Jordan, and they cross over on dry ground, which I feel like that's God reminding them of. I feel like there were so many different ways that he could have them cross over the Jordan. I feel like that was intentional. And I think what's so cool about that is, hey, you know, all those stories that you've heard of, they were real. Like I feel like him choosing to do it that way is God saying like, here's a reminder for you, a physical reminder that I've got you, right? And I can't imagine Joshua like, where'd the water go? Oh man. Like, you know, he's a human being. Like we forget that he wasn't like, saw that coming. Like, no, he's a human being, you know, and so it's okay for him to be standing in awe when the water stopped. And Josh was like, oh my gosh, he does got me, right? And then what went way before him is the ark, right? It said that the ark was supposed to go way ahead of them. Well, why? Because when you look forward, you know, and it's kind of like Peter stepping out of the boat when he's got all of this fear. Who is he supposed to look at?
Jesus.
He's supposed to look at Jesus. What happened when he looked away? He started to sink, right? And so again, like when the ark goes in front of him, I feel like that was intentional. God was doing that because he knew that as long as they were looking at where they were going, they can look around and see the walls and the enemies and stuff. But then when they see the ark way ahead of them, not just a little ahead of them, way ahead of them, God had to go way before them. Again, it's that reminder. And so I guess that kind of leads us to the solution. And I've got 5 things because again, fear is inevitable, right? Have you ever been afraid before?
Oh, yeah.
Bo? No, he's like, no. No. Yeah, all that Taco Bell. Maybe you're afraid you're not going to make it to the bathroom in time. But yeah, I mean, we've had fear, right? Like, do you remember taking your driver's test? Did you have fear at all? Okay.
I had fear.
I forgot who I was in the presence of. I was.
Especially because I was more scared the second time because I failed the first one. I had an automatic fail. And so the second time I was like, I can't mess up. I can't fail.
I need the story. An automatic fail? What'd you do?
So there was a biker.
Like I hit some lady.
I was taking a right turn. There was a biker right on my side, and he was going the same speed with me. But there was already traffic in front, so I was supposed to merge into the bike lane, and he didn't let me. He was on the side of me, like he didn't scoot up, like he could have. And he's
on a bicycle.
So by the time I had to get to the right turn, but he has his own lane. Like go all the way up. Like why are you ain't next to me? And then I didn't merge into the bike lane, so it was automatic fail.
Man, I remember being afraid because you have to. I don't know if you have to do this, but you have to park along the curb and then back up along a curb. And I guess I remember hearing that like if you tap the curb at all, it's like an automatic fail. And I remember being afraid of that. Like, we didn't have backup cameras when I was taking, and this is not long. I mean, it was 2006.
Well, they only let you use the backup cameras. So.
Yeah. But I remember, like, being afraid of that. I remember, like, I heard a story of, like, if you pull straight forward through the parking spot instead of backing up out of your parking spot, like, if there's nobody parked in front of you and you just pull straight forward, it's an automatic fail. instead of backing out of your space. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like if there's no car in front of you and you just pull straight through that spot, that's an automatic fail. But I remember hearing all this stuff and I'm like, okay. And I'll never forget, like,
For all your
I remember I knew I was nervous, but I was like sweating. And we like get to the end. It's like the last 2 turns. And I remember like sitting on the road and I'm like waiting for my indicator. And I remember I was like, man, like I've been afraid, like I've been nervous before, but never this nervous. Like I'm sweating, guys. And the drive instructor, she leaned forward and turned the heater off. The heater was on the whole time. And I remember like I thought that it was just me like super nervous and scared, but it was the heater. She's like, I'm sorry, I have to turn that off. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Oh my gosh.
dripping in sweat.
But yeah, like, you know, we have reasons to fear. And there's all kinds of, I mean, I don't know what you got going on today. I don't know if you're afraid about a test coming up. I know, like, I mean, Jeremy's not with us today, but he's got a lot coming up. I mean, Manny, you've got a lot coming up with some career stuff. And I mean, even looking forward to a job that both of you will be facing scary moments, whether it's a fire or a crime scene or something like that. Like, both of you are looking at pursuing careers where fear is absolutely inevitable, you know? And if not, the training will help with that, you know, because you always train for the worst and hope for the best, right? So fear is inevitable, right? We know that. And it could be fear of asking a girl out on a dance, or walking into a scary situation, right? Like fear is fear. It doesn't matter what the brand of fear is. Fear is controlling. We can say that a situation is scarier than the next, but man, like I feel like Kennedy was just as scared walking up to that slide that some people are when they're getting ready to get pepper sprayed, you know, before they're whatever. Like that fear is fear. It doesn't matter what the situation is. It's a real thing. That it doesn't matter if you're more scared than somebody else or what the situation is. Like fear is still controlling no matter what the situation is. So what do we do? And so the first one we've got, man, I love this verse. It's from Ecclesiastes 3. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the next one. So we'll kind of read these both in tandem. I think, do you have John 14?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11, this gets right at the end of there's a time for birth, a time to die, a time to plant, all that stuff. And then the very next verse says, he has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart, yet so that man will not find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end. But I love that he has also set eternity in their heart. And I think one of the things that helps us with fear, that helps us be strong and courageous, is that eternal perspective. And go ahead and read the verse from this is Jesus. Well, I mean, give the context, I guess, behind this verse. I mean, he's standing with his disciples, and he's about to go up to heaven, right? And he knows all of them except for one is going to die for being one of his followers. The one that doesn't is going to be boiled alive, and when that doesn't work, he's banished to an island in exile. Right? That's John. It's where he writes the book of Revelation. Like, that's the context. So, and Jesus knows all this. Like, they don't. But Jesus is looking at all of them, and he knows that is going to happen. And so in his brain, what is the one thing I can encourage them with when they're facing those situations? What does he say?
He says, and if I go back and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am.
Can you read the verse before that, verse 2?
Yeah. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were the place, prepare a place for you. And if I go back to prepare a place for you, I will come back to take you where you will be with me, and you also be where I am.
So he's looking at all these guys that are going to be, I mean, and like, let's put ourselves in their shoes. I mean, verse 1 says, do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. So he tells them in verse 1, don't be afraid, right? What would you tell them? Like, if let's say that you're looking at a room and it's people that you are close to. Let's fill the room. Let's say it's your brothers, it's your dad, your mom, other people from the church. Yetsy, you know that all of them are going to die in terrible ways. What would you encourage them with?
you know what I feel like what Jesus is trying to encourage him with, the eternal outcome, not this temporary life that we're living, but even no matter what happens, that Jesus will have a place for us
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like for a lot of people, that's not your first go-to. Like when
Yeah.
it comes to and trying to encourage someone through a hard time, we try and get practical. Like, hey, go for a walk every now and then. You know, go outside, take a breather, you know, get a good night's rest, you know, or like some fighting tactics. Like if they come at you, you know, make sure, you know, like whatever it may be, like we try, am I wrong? Like we try and
Yeah.
get super practical with
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But in reality, Jesus is like, man, what's the best thing that I can, don't be afraid. Why?
Because death is coming.
Yeah. And then what does Jesus say? Hey, don't be afraid, but instead what? Think of heaven. Like, man, just think of that place that I'm going to prepare for you. My father's house, it's got a lot of rooms. I mean, I was a kid in the 90s, early 2000s. That Audio Adrenaline house, that Audio Adrenaline song. It's a big, big house with lots and lots of rooms. You know that song? A big,
Never
big
really, yeah.
table with lots and lots of food. A big, big yard where we can play football. Touchdown. A big, big house. That's my father's house, right? Ba-ba-di-ba-di-ba-ba-pow, right? But that's where that song is based off of, this verse right here. And I don't feel like we do that enough. I don't, like, who dreams of heaven today? Like, not a lot of people. And yet there's so many verses cover to cover that we just looked at where what's the solution to fear in both those situations? I've put eternity in his heart. Think of heaven. Like, think, just take a minute in your moment of fear, whether it's a dance or whatever it may be. Like, let's just give the worst case scenario. Let's say that you jump off the high dive, miss the water, break every bone in your body. Like, what's the end if you're a follower of Christ? Yeah, right? So the place that I'm going to prepare for you, like, that's, again, like, how can you encourage someone that is being persecuted for being a follower of Jesus and facing death? Remind them of heaven, remind them of eternity. And so that goes for you as well, that I think for us, when we are afraid and we're dealing with fear is a real thing. But I love that quote because it is a choice. Do not fear, but instead what? I mean, if you look back at Psalm 34:4, instead put it on God. Like focus your attention on God. Focus your attention on eternity. Focus your attention on the place that Jesus has gone to prepare for you. Because how does that put your fear in perspective?
It makes it seem very small. Like, knowing the outcome, you're like, I can do this. But so that fear is minimized.
Yeah. Like, in the end, I mean, even that, I mean, you're able to be like Paul, where he's like, man, I wish I would die so that I could be in heaven. But yet, for your sake, I'm staying here because you guys need to know more about Jesus. So for your sake, I'm gonna wait to go to heaven, right? Like, it puts it in perspective, you know. Like you said, like, it's so small. Like, you're getting hung on a cross, upside down, if you're Peter. But as long as you can get through that, what's next? No more pain, no more sorrow, no more death. You get to be with Jesus in person forever. Sign me up, you know? And I think that we need to pray more for an eternal perspective. I mean, that informs the job you choose. That informs the person you marry. That informs the place you go to school and what you go to school for. That informs the conversations that you choose to have. I mean, when you have an eternal perspective, when heaven is in your mind, when heaven is in your heart, it makes the fight you had with that guy small. It makes the fears you have in life small. It makes your life seem small. Your time on earth small. Like, I mean, when the Bible says make the best use of the time, like, yeah, it really puts it in perspective, because when you compare your life on earth to eternity, especially given the fact that you don't know how long your life is, I think the average age for men is like 65 years or something like that. You compare that to eternity, how are you going to use that time? I do a lot of HIIT training, and one of the workouts that I do, at the very end of one of the workouts, he says, you've got a minute and a half left. What are you going to do with this last minute and a half? And he uses that to motivate you, because in your head, you're like, you're right. It's only a minute and a half. Like, I can push harder, right? And it's the same thing. Like, everybody all of a sudden finds this secret energy when they can see the finish line. Like, I've been in races, even my last one that I just did, I knew that I was in the home stretch, no more obstacles in front of me. Dude, I freaking booked it, and I wanted to pass this dude. Well, where was that energy the rest of the race? It was there. But again, when you think of the ultimate end being done, I don't have to race anymore, I don't have to feel the pain anymore, there's no more obstacles to jump over, man, I want that. Like, what did we sing to close out the service on Sunday? Run to the Father. That again, like, when you have eternity in your mind and you don't know if you're going to pay the bills, you can just dream of a time when that's not going to be the case. And that's how Jesus would encourage you, What's the next one we got? Fear God more. So we got pray for God to give you an eternal perspective. Man, pray for that every day. God, put eternity in my heart. I pray that a lot. I am jealous of John, Daniel, Isaiah, Moses, all those people that got to see his throne room. Like, that would have been terrifying, first off. Talk about fear. That an angel grabs a burning coal and touches it to Isaiah's face. Well, that's scary. Especially when you understand how angels are described in the Bible. They're not these pretty little women with wings. Think of the angel that's described in Revelation 4 and Isaiah 6 with eyes all over the place, 7 wings, all this stuff, and he's coming at you with a burning coal from the bottom of the throne of God, and he's going to touch it to your mouth. Like, that's freaking scary. That's what horror films are made of. You know what I mean? But still, like, man, pray daily that God would put eternity in your heart.
Ultimately, that would give you just comfort. It should.
Oh, yeah, comfort. But then, like, what else?
Yeah.
It gives you that come at me, bro. You know what I mean?
Gives you that
courage.
Like,
Polycarp, he's one of the earliest martyrs. But he's like, if you look at Polycarp's speech before he's burned at the stake, man, that guy had an eternal perspective. Like, he's about to be burnt at the stake, killed, and like he is just given the biggest so what to these people. I mean, other people that were burned, like if you guys, not Johannes Kepler, what was his name? Johann Huss. 100 years before Martin Luther came along with the Protestant Reformation, he was preaching the same things: salvation by grace through faith, all that kind of stuff. And the Catholic Church burned him at the stake as a martyr, or as a heretic. But he said, "Today you burn a goose, but behold, a swan is coming in 100 years." And guess who came 100 years later? Martin Luther. And I love that, like, in his trial, they were accusing him of being a Hussite, and Luther was like, "No, I'm not." And then they took a brief recess, and he went, and he didn't know who Johann Huss was. So he went, during the recess of the trial, he went and found out who it was, came back, he's like, "You're right. I am a Hussite." Right? Again, like, when you have that eternal perspective, the things that these amazing people throughout history have done makes total sense. Like, is the fire gonna hurt? Yeah. But it's really short compared to forever with God. But then again, fear God more. And this is Matthew 10:28. Do you have that one? Okay, I think I got it. I can't remember which ones we divvied up. Matthew 10:28. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Look at that. There's my bookmark right there. Matthew 10:28. It says this: "Do not fear those who kill the body, but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both body and soul in hell." This is one of the greatest reminders, because again, how do you avoid letting fear of man control you? Realize how much more fearful God is. That, like, yeah, this dude might be able to stab you and end your life, but God can speak you body and soul out of existence. Which is scarier?
Spoke out of existence.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, I mean, if you take the descriptions in Revelation seriously about the end times and what that's going to look like, that's freaking scary. Like, I'm sorry, but the sky splitting open and a dude with fire eyes, sword for a mouth, riding on a horse, tattoo on his side, on his thigh, with his robe dipped in blood, leading an army of angels down here. I don't care who you are. That's freaking scary. Even if you're on that side, it is intimidating. It's like when you're standing at the top of a mountain, or you're looking over the edge of the Grand Canyon. Like, is it beautiful? Is it awesome? Yeah, but it's still a little bit scary. You're like, man, like, this is big. Like, I wouldn't even feel myself at the bottom probably, right? Like, when you realize, when you fear God and you have that perfect respect for who he is, and then you see someone else step up, you're not afraid of the God that's going to, like the next one, know that God is an avenger, Romans 12:19. Do you have that one?
Yeah. So it says here, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine, I avenge. I will repay, says the Lord.
Like, when you realize that God's going to get what is owed, God is the avenger, God's going to seek revenge, it says that we don't even need to retaliate. Like, God is that awe-inspiring, God's that amazing. There's no reason to fear man, because he is the biggest fish. He is the most powerful, the most intimidating. And he promises that they will get what is owed. So that means we don't even need to retaliate, because God will. That instead, we need to do the last part, pray for our enemies and our broken world. I mean, Matthew 5:43 and 44 says, you have heard it that it is said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. Again, eternal perspective. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. This is Jesus saying, you got to pray for your enemies. They need to know Jesus. And this is like Stephen when he's being stoned, the first martyr recorded in Scripture, being killed for proclaiming Jesus by Saul, who would later become Paul, who would write most of the letters in the New Testament. And what does he say as he's being stoned? He says, Father, forgive him. He does the same thing that Jesus did from the cross. Like, as we get ready for Easter, I mean, realize what Jesus went through. He basically got 2 death penalties. He got flogged with a cat o' nine tails. Scripture says beaten beyond recognition, literally. And then he's put on a cross. No wonder he died so fast, right? That he gives up his spirit. But what does he say in the midst of all of that? He wasn't afraid of any of that.
Give him for later night.
Yeah. I mean, when we get ready for Good Friday, like, Jesus is on the cross after going through terrible things, facing death, and he's able to look down and have pity. Like, that's the guy that's saying right there, pray for your enemies. Pray for those that are going to persecute you. The same God that's, the same Jesus, same God that's telling you to think of the place I'm going to prepare for you. That when you have fear, fear is a real thing, but it's also a choice to let it control you. You're either going to let it control you, or you're going to look at it with a heavenly perspective, knowing how much more powerful God is, and like Jesus, be able to say, take pity on them. They don't know what they're doing. That really the ultimate solution isn't me getting out of the situation. The ultimate solution is them having Jesus. Like, if I get at, like, let's say that I'm locked up and a terrorist has me under lock and key. Well, if I get to escape, that's great. But guess what? They're going to continue their reign of terror. Well, what's the ultimate solution? Come, Lord Jesus, right? Like, we can pray that God would save us from that situation, but what's the ultimate solution? Like, when you look at this terror attack, whoever did it, ISIS, Ukraine, whoever, 137 people dead, plus, more than that. It's awful. How often that happens. We can pray for people to be safe in certain situations, but what's the ultimate solution? What would God say the ultimate solution to that fear is, to that situation? It's him. That if we want enemies to stop doing that, we need to pray that they get Jesus. Like, how is praying for our enemies and for our broken world a solution to fear? Because if Jesus comes, there's no reason to fear. If fear is gone. if Jesus is here. That if someone's life is transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit, you don't have to be afraid of him anymore. That all the people that were afraid of Saul weren't afraid of Paul. What was the audible? His encounter with Jesus. That he went from a terrifying terrorist, in reality, to one of the most sold out people for Jesus in history. Like, that's what we should pray for. Like, pray for safe travels, obviously. Yes. I mean, we're going through a daily prayer as a team as we get ready to go to South Africa, and we have a different topic. And the very first one we talk about is protection. Spiritual, emotional, and physical protection. Like, of course, pray for protection. But when you're facing fear, when you're afraid, and you're trying to get to a point where you don't want to let that fear control you, whether it's spiritual fear, emotional fear, physical fear, whatever it may be, remember heaven, put eternity in your heart, realize that Jesus gave you that, and in the sacrifice and all the reasons that he could have feared. He, in the garden before that, on Thursday night, what did he pray? If it be possible, remove this cup from me. Like, he was praying so hard that blood was coming out of his pores. There was a reason to be afraid for him. Like, he knew how he was going to die, and he was still afraid. Like, that fear was still there. But you know what? He didn't let that fear control him. He says, but if not my will, yours be done. That he instead chose God's path. He chose the Father. And what did that allow him to do? It says that he strained forward toward the cross. He's slipping on his own blood. And it says that his eyes were fixed in the book of Hebrews. And he strained forward because of what he was going to do. He was going to die so that way you could be saved. So that way you could have that eternal perspective. Like, when that's in your mind, you don't have to choose fear. You can take a deep breath and keep your feet moving. Fear's going to be still there. The reasons to fear are still going to be there because danger's a real thing. But you're able to continue to persevere. You're not frozen. You're able to keep moving. Knowing that even if what you're afraid of happens, you're in eternity forever with Jesus because of what he did for you. Like, remember that this Easter season. I love our Good Friday service because we get to nail all that stuff to the cross, you know. And that really, man, I hope people take that seriously. That the cross is really the reason why none of that stuff ultimately matters in the grand scheme of things. And so we want to continue to pray, you know, for the families of those that experience that loss. We want to continue to pray that God would take evil out of the world. But we know, I mean, the book of Revelation lays it out very clearly what the ultimate solution to evil leaving the world is, and that's Jesus coming. And I just feel like we need to be praying more for the gospel to reach every corner of the world so that way Jesus can come back. You know, that the overall thing would be fixed and not just the individual things. Let me, you know?
Yeah.
So you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to look at your eternal perspective and like really, see what really truly matters and really understand that it's more worth it being about God's business than about being my comfort, and schemes. And I think we should look at other people's, where they're at in life, because sometimes when we get so caught up in our pride or situation that's so temporary, we don't think about it. Where's that person up with Christ? Is it worth, having this hostility towards them? Kind of like you're asking me, I've had a lot of encounters and altercations, especially when it came to sports or anything. And high school now, well, I'm not in high school anymore, but high school then, like, I just know all the brokennesses in it, and I know how much pride is in it. So when people only think about themselves, I think it's important as Christians to think about where they're at in life and like how vulnerable it is, and what everything that we do act towards them, this is what they'll see through Christ. And so just remembering that, and obviously praying for those people too. It's really hard.
Well, because those people have reason to fear.
Yeah.
I think everything we mentioned, like why we as Christians don't have to fear, doesn't apply if you're not a follower of Jesus. So a person that doesn't follow Jesus has every right to be afraid, right? Because of what they're ultimately facing. And I love that you brought that up, man. Thank you. Because again, when you think of the other person and you love your neighbor more than yourself, again, like, you're right. You look at those people that are so prideful, that are so caught up, that are so just awful people, and yet they don't have that eternal perspective. They don't get to look forward to a forever in heaven. And I think when you swallow your pride and you see those people the way God sees them, you don't see them as an enemy. You see them as somebody that's lost. So I appreciate that, man. Well, we don't have time. Thankfully, we got Wednesday. We don't have time to get to these. But great discussion today, and again, just remember that fear is a real thing. Fear is going to exist. It's always going to exist because, again, danger is a real thing, right? But I think the most important thing to remember is you don't have to choose that you have so many, you've got a church full of people. You have other followers of Jesus that are going to walk through those things with you. That you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to choose that fear. But instead, you can remember heaven. You can remember eternity. You can remember how great God is and allow those things to keep your feet moving instead of letting you freeze in fear. And wherever you're at, whether it's fear of a test or fear of an impending big career change or life move or whatever it may be, wedding coming up, whatever it is, just remember that there's no fear too big that nothing can remove you from the love of God. And that's what's ultimately most important. So anyway, hope that finds you well. Thank you so much for hopping in, David.
Oh, yeah,
I know
of
it was
course.
last second, and I really appreciate you being here. Thanks, Manny. Thanks, Bo, for hopping in for Manny while he was afraid, whatever was happening there. Yeah, but thank you so much for everybody. Thanks for those that are listening, whether you're listening live or going to hop on and listen later. But this is one of those that go forth and realize that God can move mountains by his voice, and you serve a great God. And whether you're stepping with us in a couple of weeks to go to the ends of the earth on the mission field, or you're just going to try and talk to someone at lunch,
Strong and courageous.
be strong and courageous. I love it, man. Yeah, thank you. So love you guys. Thank you so much. And happy 10th episode, NG Podcast people.
First
And
donut.
here we go. First donut. Yeah. And here we go. We're going to move on to the next 10. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next time. We're signing off.